Hello everyone, it's Brian here with part 3 of selections from my list of 200 favorite Canadian songs of all time, which, as I've mentioned, is kind of a stupid thing to do, but sometimes you have to do stupid things. So, as I did in the past, I'm going to mention a couple of names at the beginning of people who are not on this list. And the first is Drake. Probably no surprise there. I'm not a fan of Drake. Don't really know his music. I've only heard a couple of tracks, and this doesn't really do anything for me. Another one would be, this might be a surprise, is Sarah McLachlan is not on this list. Yeah, I guess back in the day I was sort of interested in her music. I saw her in concert way back when she only had an EP out, and I remember her doing a cover of Peter Gabriel's Salisbury Hill, which I thought was quite fun. But I've never really followed along with her. I've kind of just lost track, and I'm not really that interested in her music. Thirdly, how about this one? Queen of the Canadian thrift store record bin, Anne Murray, not on this list. Burt Reynolds was a giant fan of hers, so was my dad. Her songs to me are like earworms. I can't do enough to get her songs out of my head if I ever hear them, so I am not going down the Anne Murray road. So let's start with what's on the list at number 180 from a band I don't really like. Prism from Vancouver. They formed, I think, around 77. This is a record from 1980 called Young and Restless. They were known for two really gigantic Canadian radio hits. One was a song called Armageddon, and one was a track called Spaceship Superstar, which was used in the shuttle program to wake the astronauts one day. I just don't like those songs anymore. I probably did when I was younger, but a track that's kind of stayed with me is track 2 on here called Young and Restless, the title track. That seems to be a fairly fine song from this band. I don't mind it at all. By the way, I do like this record cover. But let me say, if my house was burning down, I would not run to grab this record. If it was lost in a flood, I would not replace it. But I do have some fond memories of that track from way back when, Young and Restless. And this is on that lovely Capitol label, which I always love because it does remind me of being younger. We had so many records in our house on this label, and I just love seeing this label because it just brings me back, and I have strong memories of whatever else in our house was on that label. So quite nice. So I'm not really a fan of that band anymore, but you know, they're okay for that song. Number 179, I'm sure everyone will know this artist. It's Jeff Healey. Well, this is the Jeff Healey Band, See the Light from 1988. If you've seen the movie Roadhouse, you'll know that this was the house band in that movie. Kind of a crazy film, but they were the house band. Of course, he died of cancer, I think in 2008, and he was a blind Canadian blues guitarist, as you can see by the way he's playing the guitar here. Fairly well respected. I think one of their biggest hits was the cover version of the Beatles, While My Guitar Gently Weeps. But a track I'm choosing here is the title track, See the Light. I did see him twice in concert, one at an outdoor festival with a lot of people there, and another time I saw him in a club on Spadina Avenue. Honestly, he was sitting probably 15 feet away from me, which is really, I have to say, really cool. Ben Montench from the Heartbreakers appears on 4 tracks on this record, if you're curious to know. Here's the inner sleeve. He operated a club in Toronto for some years. I never went to it, but it's, well known. I'll show you the light. I think it's on Arista. Yes, Arista. So, Jeff Healey Band at 179. Now, 178, a Canadian finger-style guitarist, finger-picking, I guess, style guitarist from the First Nations community in Canada. This is Don Ross, and the album's called Bearing Straight. The first time I heard of him was when I won free tickets to a concert that he was doing. He was opening for Canadian band Manteca, who is not on the list, but I was quite taken by this guy because his style was just so impressive. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Fast, fluid, incredible guitar work. He's released now something like 20 to 23 albums, heavily influenced by Bruce Cockburn in a way. Really interesting music, just blazing fast in some respects. The track I'm choosing is called The First Ride, the first track on side A. Originally, I think he was born in Montreal, but that's not where he got his musical start, I don't think. Hugh Marsh, who I mentioned in the first video, does violin on one track on here. This is on Toronto label Duke Street Records, with lots of dust there. I saw him one other time at a small club on Queen Street. I went with a friend of mine, and again, I was just blown away. I didn't understand how he was managing to play the guitar with that speed. It was quite impressive. Number 177, a band that might have been sort of typecast as sort of a band of novelty songs, partly because of the song on this record. I'm talking about The Extras, bit parts from 1981, which is really a power pop or neo-ska band out of Toronto, I believe. Is that right? Is that where they're from? I can't remember. Anyway, they were kind of seen, I guess, at least in my eyes, as sort of a novelty band because of the track on here called Circular Impression, which you'll see at the end of side 1, which is a kind of a comedy song about the fact that this gentleman has been carrying around a circular prophylactic device in his wallet for so long that it's left the circular impression. All he wants to do is use it, but he can't find someone who's willing to help him install it, as he says in the song. So I think my friends and I felt some sort of affinity with that song. Maybe we're in the same frame of mind. So it was quite a funny song. When it was played on the radio, we always laughed because it just seems so ridiculous. But I think the band probably suffered a bit from that. I don't know. It didn't get great reviews when it came out, that album, but anyway, more Dusty Records. This is on Ready Records out of Toronto from 1981. Anyway, pretty cool track. Interesting band. Okay, so that was number 177. Number 176 from a pop band from Vancouver called Idle Eyes, and this is their album called Idolize. The first of two, I think they released. This came out in 1984, and I think in 1985 they won a songwriting award for the track I'm going to mention, which is the first track on side A called Tokyo Rose, which is using this historical reference to Tokyo Rose, that propaganda machine in Asia during the war, to use it as a metaphor for a relationship situation that the singer's in, which is kind of interesting, I have to say. Probably their most notable song, probably from their most notable record. I haven't heard the second one. Here's the lyrics in there. On Ouya Records. So not a bad song. That's a song that I quite enjoy listening to when it comes on the radio, if it comes on the radio. Number 175, a band that originally was known as the Payolas. They later changed their name to Paul Hyde and the Payolas, and then Rock and Hyde. This band features Paul Hyde, of course, and Bob Rock, who became a well-known Canadian record producer working with people like the Tragically Hip, etc. This is No Stranger to Danger from 1980. When did this come out? 1982. So I've chosen the track Eyes of a Stranger, which is the second track on side A. By the way, you might notice it's produced by Mick Ronson, which is kind of interesting. They're a band from Vancouver. Back in the day, I would say that this song was way overplayed, and I actually got tired of it. But looking back, I think it's a pretty good track. And when I hear it, I think, yeah, they were actually not bad. So the Payolas changed their name in some respects because of the Payola scandal. So you see there's a $sign at the end of Payolas. And they were never invited to any kind of Dick Clark production because of their name and his implication in the Payola scandal. So that probably hurt them in some respects. Here's not a bad track. On A&M Records. Right, so the Payolas. Next, at number 174, another band that maybe were a little misunderstood because of this track they had, which is kind of a humorous track in a way. This is the Shuffle Demons and their album called Streetniks from 1985. On this record is a song called Spadinabus, second track on side A. They're a jazz fusion band who started as buskers and then managed to record this record and had a surprise hit. I don't think anyone was expecting it. The giant hit in Canada. The song was used by City TV as the intro song for their Speaker's Corner segment. So I think it surprised everyone. I think they did a number of records, 4 records, but I don't think they ever captured the joy of this record. Oh, look, it has an insert in here. with an advertisement for you to join the Shuffle Demon fan club at Box 314, Station E, Toronto. I guess you'd get return mail from that now. Yeah, and then it has things you can buy here like t-shirts, etc., buttons, etc. And the Shuffle Demon gift shop, looks like someone ran that off on a little copier somewhere. And this is on Stubby Records, which always, I don't think I have anything else from Stubby Records. And the name always makes me laugh because I think, I could be wrong, but I always think of the old Canadian beer bottles, which were known as Stubbies, and they were retired in favor of tall necks. And there was this kind of longing for a return to that kind of beer bottle. But I'm not sure if that's what it's for or not. But I don't have anything else, I'm sure, on Stubby Records. All right, number 173, a band I mentioned recently because I did mention Andrew Cash in a previous video on this series, and this is his band, L'Étranger. This is Running Out of Funtown. And I mentioned this guy on a couple of other occasions as well, Canadian musician in this, sort of punk rock band called L'Étranger with Charlie Angus. And interestingly, as I just mentioned, they both became members of Parliament, were both elected to Parliament. So this is their punk band. I'm not sure it's really the kind of punk you would expect, though, because it's not that blazing guitar kind of punk. It's more sophisticated than that. But it does have the sort of punk outlook or the political ideology you'd associate with some left-leaning punk bands. And the track I'm choosing is One People, which is an anti-apartheid song. This is their second of 3 EPs. Of course, they took their name from the Albert Camus novel. So 3 EPs, and then they kind of wrapped it up. And then years later, took these political careers. But, the other songs in here is like Warzone, for example. So it has a sort of punk political ideology, I suppose. On Ground Zero Records. This is from 1984, by the way. So, not bad. Kind of enjoy that song. And number 172, I'm going to a compact disc now, and this is from a compact disc called The Canadian Alternative. There were 3 in this series. There was a Canadian Alternative 92, and then a Canadian Alternative Volume 3, and these 3 CDs compiled some interesting, lesser-known tracks from Canada, and honestly, I could have chosen every song on every CD to put on this list, but that would have been ridiculous in some respects. But I will come back to the CD, I think, twice more, because there's 2 other songs in here I will talk about. So this is a track called Paisley Girls by a band called Chain of Fun. You might not be able to see that, but it's track number 3. And then at the bottom, there is a 91 remix of that track, which is oddly shorter than the original. By the way, this image here is a take on the famous Confederation Conference image that you might know if you're a Canadian history person. This is so Chain of Fun from Toronto. They did one 4-track EP, which if I could find it, I would own it, but I don't. So I never picked it up. I never saw it anywhere. So one 4-track EP. I think there was some interest from a record label in the UK, but they turned it down because they didn't want to relocate, as I understand. So they really did this, and that was it. I just watched the video recently, and it's fantastic. I mean, the guy's hair, this lead singer's hair is just phenomenal. And I think back in the day, I probably would have thought that's ridiculous hair, but now I have this, sort of jealous rage about that guy's hair. So kind of fun. Anyway, really cool, kind of infectious track called Paisley Girls, which I think is quite fun. So that's number 172. Now, 171, I've chosen another person who wasn't born here. He was born in the UK, but he came here at the age of 4, so I think everyone considers him to be Canadian. And that is a singer called Robert Priest. Now, I say singer, but in fact, he is an author. He's written lots of children's books, written lots of poetry. In fact, I knew him first as a poet before I knew he had any records out. This is his debut EP from 1982, which I think is just called Robert Priest. Right, and there's only 4 tracks on here. Anyway, I've chosen the track Little Gun from 1982. This is on Airwave Records. There's side 1. So I think he's written something like 18 books of poetry, etc., children's books. Anyway, I've chosen Little Gun for track number 171. Kind of an enjoyable song. I've never seen him in concert. I know he's played many times, just never crossed paths with him, but I think that's a pretty good track, to be honest. There's the track listing, by the way, in case I didn't show it to you. So I think he was born in 51, I think. So there he's looking like a young man. Anyway, that is it for today. Thanks for watching. I don't know, maybe I'll do another couple of these this week. We'll see how it goes, unless everyone's getting bored of Canadian songs. But we're getting to the good part now. So I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.